Hi everyone, my name is Olatunji Oloko and I am a Bachelor's of Applied Technology Petroleum Engineering student here at SAIT. I am also a chapter and regional officer for the Phi Theta Kappa Honor Society. I'm very pleased to welcome you all to our virtual fireside chat themed helping students prepare for their virtual life in the virtual environment. Professional life in the virtual environment, sorry. And this fireside chat is actually a part of the execution of our college project this year. And we are really happy that you could take the time out of your busy schedule to attend this event. With me are my fellow chapter officers, our president, Raja Raju, Saeed Ahmed, Courtney Third, and Danica Gale. And we also have our advisors, Aiden Wyatt, Brenda G, who's also our regional coordinator, and Madeline Schultz, who will now give us the land acknowledgement.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us tonight. In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge that we live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Nations, including the Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, Tsuut'ina, and the Stoney Nakoda First Nations, the Métis Nation Region 3, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you, everyone. And without further ado, I would like for us to go into the panelists for tonight. And I'm just going to share my screen for a bit here and show you guys the people that would be enlightening us about our futures as the world is right now. So if you would just give me a second here. So okay, there we go. And here are our panelists. So first we have Dr. Joanna Williams. Dr. Jo has served as a chair and district curriculum coordinator for chemistry, physics, and computer science at Haynes Community College. She has taught computer science, leadership development, and is an award-winning Phi Theta Kappa advisor for 10 years. Dr. Jo holds a bachelor's and master's degree in computer science, a master's degree in management and leadership, and a PhD in higher education administration with a certification in community college leadership. Dr. Jo has also led the development of professional training for new community college faculty, and she has served leadership roles in various communities and councils. She is the lead curriculum developer for several PTK Edge courses. She is also listed amongst Mississippi Business Journal's top 50 under 40 business leaders, Boom Magazine's top 10 young influentials, and she's also a graduate of the Leadership Greater Jackson program. She's a native of Oxford, Mississippi, and she now lives in Atlanta with her daughter, Nova. And the next person we have here is Charlie Fu, who is an associate director with Turner and Townsend. He's originally from Edmonton, and he's been in Calgary for the past 8 years. He's primarily worked in oil and gas as an estimator and project controls, and he did this for 20 years. He had the opportunity to even start a project in Peru. He's worked for engineering, EPCM, construction, and he's owned his own firms. His past project experiences range from small gas stations and restaurants to large plants like Curl, Carmen Creek, and Syncrude. Throughout his career, he's participated in all stages of hiring processes, and he screens from resumes to final interviews. The next person we have on the list is Amy X. Anderson. She's a recruitment advisor, and she's also a student here at State studying the Bachelor's of Business Administration. Amy is a human resource professional enrolled in her final class of the BBA program at State, and she is majoring in human resource management. She has worked for 2.5 years as a recruitment advisor for a boutique recruitment firm, and she specializes in legal, professional service, and property management recruitment. And last but not least that we have on our team of panelists is Garrett. Garrett is a 4th-year financial services student here at SAIT. He's been working for TD for almost 2 years, but he's also looking to transition to a career in wealth management. He's currently seeking new opportunities in London, England. And we have two other representatives who unfortunately we do not have on the slide. Debs and Leslie, they're other people from Turner and Townsend. And we're just really happy to have all of you here. Welcome once again and enjoy the evening. Welcome and opening remarks from each panelist. We will start with Dr. Joe and head into the Turner and Townsend representatives. And then after that, we would have the student representatives as well give us just a little bit, just something, just to get us started with. Thank you.
Thank you and good evening. That was a very professional opening. And so it's always good to see that. Thank you for the introduction also. I'm really excited to be here this evening and to welcome all of you here. When I saw the flyer, the virtual fireside chat flyer and the topic, I was super excited to know that you guys were doing a project related to this. It is very important right now. They talked about in my bio that I develop a lot of the EDGE courses, and one of them is Employment Edge. And so right now it's really relevant to understand how things are changing virtually for you guys. The Employment Edge was developed so that you could sort of get an idea of how to prepare for the workforce, not necessarily how to develop your soft skills, but how to get a job. What are the stages for that, like the interview process and the resume process. And so I hope to get to share some of that with you tonight because we developed it for you. There's not a lot out there. There's a lot out there about keeping a job and soft skills and how to be a great employee, but what are the steps for actually getting one? And that's the purpose of our Employment Edge course. So I'm really excited to talk to you about this. And I reviewed some of the questions and they're really good. So thank you for having me. Thank you for being here. And I'm really excited about this project.
Thank you so much, Dr. Joe. And now we would move into the Turner and Townsend representatives. Charlie, would you like to start?
No problem. Well, yeah, I'm glad to be here. As you can see from the introduction, I've worked in a lot of different places, and currently I'm with Turner and Townsend. And it's an interesting times you guys are graduating in, so it is a challenge coming forward. I'm going to pass it on to Deb Stewart, which is from our Toronto office. She'll have her introduction, and then Leslie will follow afterward, if that works for you. You ladies?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm Deb Stewart. I am the recruitment lead for Turner and Townsend in Canada. I've got about coming up to 11 years of experience in HR and recruitment. And I help, I wouldn't say put together, but enhance and change our graduate recruitment process for Toronto last year. And that was also going to be rolled out throughout Calgary as well. So lots of experience with some of the new technology is coming out and coming your way. It's actually already been in play for Turner and Townsend's graduates last year. So not going to be new for everybody, but it's something that I've had experience in, so I can provide some guidance on that. I'll move on to
Awesome.
Leslie.
Thanks, Deb. So, hi, everyone. I'm Leslie Fowler. I'm a director of the real estate sector here in Calgary for Turner and Townsend. I am a Polytechnic grad as well. I graduated from BCIT many, many years ago in architecture and building engineering. And I was recruited to go work in a QS firm, and I had never really known much about what a quantity surveyor was. But it was a good talk and a good move, and I've been in the industry as a QS for about 16 years now. So I've worked for a few different consulting firms. I've worked for a general contractor. I have had lots of opportunity of recruiting and building teams, lots of experience doing bringing people in from overseas back about 5-10 years ago when we were doing a lot of that. So a lot of that experience was doing virtual and telephone calls, not video so much at that time, but doing calls and hiring people remotely. So look forward to engaging with you guys and the students, and look forward to growing a relationship with Turner and Townsend and the state grads. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm really sorry I didn't get to introduce you properly. We hadn't gotten your bio and paragraph, so I just had to like ramp it up, because of time and everything. So I sincerely apologize.
No, that's
And
okay. I didn't get it to you in time, so that's fine.
awesome. So I'd like to now have the student representatives. So that's Amy Anderson and Garrett. If you guys could just please do a little bit of just what Dr. Joe and our people from Turner and Townsend did. And Amy, would you like to go first? Awesome.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me this evening. It's so nice to connect with new faces. So yes, as mentioned, I am a soon-to-be graduate of SAIT. I'm in my last class actually right now towards my BBA in human resources. I took a 2-year diploma at MacEwan University and then transferred to SAIT and have loved it. And for the past 2.5 years, I've been fortunate enough to be recruiting in the human resources and administration division for a boutique firm here in Calgary, which has been great. It's been busy, knock on wood, and I hope it continues to be that way in the new year. So that's a little bit about me. Thanks so much for having me this evening.
All right, and hello everybody, I'm Garrett Brisbois. I'm a 4th-year student here at SAIT as well, going into my, I'm in the financial services. I don't really have much recruiting experience, but what I do have is experience in the same steps that you guys are taking on getting a job. So I'm kind of here to kind of help you guys see what it's like with this new norm, everything on digital, and try to share my experiences and of course learn from you guys. And yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, you guys. And without further ado, again, I'd like for us to move into the questions that we have for tonight. And so this is how we've set it up to go. We're gonna present, we sent everyone in the panel a copy of the question that we're gonna ask, so we don't just catch you guys off guard. And so how we're gonna have it for everyone is we would ask each question and we would give just the same way everybody introduced themselves. We can use that same order to have us, the panelists, answer or give their input to that question. And then after that, we would get some input as well from the audience. And everybody on the audience, if you wanna add something or contribute, you can just easily post it in chat. Or if you actually want to talk and you want us to see you, you can use the raise hand icon and I will call on you. And if I do, then please turn on your microphone and your camera so we can see who we're talking to, and you can just, and then we can have an open floor but just so it could be well organized. We would just really love it if you use the raise hand signal so we can know the people to call. Thank you so much. And I would just go into the first question, which is how is the virtual environment going to impact the interview/recruitment process?
I guess I'm supposed to start, and that is a very good question because that's where we are now. A lot of stuff is virtual and online. And so you'll see a lot more of Zoom and Skype interviews, but you'll also note that they're gauging some things that are a little bit different now. Like normally in an interview, they're gonna see how well you work with the people at the company, how well you fit into the culture. But when you get to now where they're doing online, they're gonna have to gauge your professionalism online because you may be working from home. Gauge your ability to be professional online, your background, how you present yourself in an online environment. So not only will you be engaging in those interviews virtually, they will be looking for slightly different things in case you're working from home, or what is your professionalism like online. So you'll want to note those things that are a little bit different as you are participating in those interviews.
Awesome. And yeah, okay. Yeah, please.
I'm actually going to pass this on to Deb. She has quite a lot of experience with this, so I will let Deb speak.
I think there's elements of the process that for a lot of companies had already started to change, and technology had been implemented to, I guess, to sustain what could be very, very high volume in terms of how many applicants there would be. So, for example, in Turner and Townsend, as I said, we actually we were doing some pre-recorded video interviews, and we did those because we were getting upwards of 300-400 applications, and actually choosing those people on merit of their resume alone meant that, you know, we weren't actually able to do phone screenings with that many people. There was a team of 2 of us, and a huge number of candidates. So at that point, we had already gone a little bit digital on that front. It was the first time we'd used the software. Lots of companies and larger companies are using graduate video interviews, and platforms like that. So some people may already have been, you know, privy to this. I think what's changing now is that final interview, where you're going to have to make that final impression out of, you know, 10, 12 people, for a number of places, and that's going to be quite hard to do on video. We typically do presentations. That's going to be challenging for people to, you know, it's already quite daunting for somebody to get up and present in front of people, never mind having to do it on Zoom or one of these platforms. So for me, I think that the world was already changing in terms of the technology that companies were using, but now we're actually forced to do that the whole way through. So that virtual hiring goes from the beginning of the process all the way to your onboarding, where you're still not necessarily always coming into an office environment. Okay. Leslie?
I don't really have too much more to add. I can echo Deb's. I've been the ones doing the final interviews, and we have probably, I think I've hired 4 people that I have never met in person. So that is definitely a very different experience. So far, most of the, I think we do a pretty thorough screening, and we do a lot of interviews. But that's something different that I am adapting to, is never having that face-to-face, being able to read somebody's physical body language, and presenting offers in that. So it's a bit of a challenge, but I think we are all adapting. And what Joanna said was, you are getting engaged on how you're going to be online with clients, because you likely will be doing most of your work virtually. And the same as when we interviewed in person, we'd be gauging how you are in person, because you're going to be working with clients in person. So I think to have the interview process aligning with the type of work you're going to be doing anyways is helpful for a hiring manager, for sure.
I believe I'm up, and I just to add on to that, I completely agree with what everyone said so far as well. I think, and this is just my perspective on being virtually now, is the fact that you do need to work harder to seem engaged, to have that body language come through, to make it seem like you're presentable and that you are prepared for the meeting. Usually when I'm meeting with people, you know, before COVID, you're seeing how early they are, how they treat, you know, the receptionist, just how they act and how their patients comes through. So I definitely agree with all of that, and you need to work harder now to put your best foot forward during a Zoom interview.
Yeah, and I pretty much agree with what everybody else said. I guess in my experiences, you see a lot of kind of preliminary interviews where you don't actually get that face-to-face. That's more like a digital interview. And I know they're doing a lot of that to kind of screen out everybody because the extra applicants. And I totally agree. It's all about presentation. you're kind of replicating what you're going to be showing and how you're going to be taking your Zoom calls in the future with your potential clients. So it's always good to be feeling as confident as you can, making sure you have a good background, good suit on, or whatever kind of fits the presentation. But yeah, I think everything that was said today is perfectly accurate. It's pretty much what I have to say.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, guys. And we will move to the next question, and that will be presented by Saeed.
Hi, everyone. My name is Saeed, and I'm an executive member of PTK Fireside chapter. So the next question is based on the hiring process. So as we know, there are different parts in an interview. Like the employers are gonna ask about the behavioral questions and the technical questions, and they're also gonna notice about their body language or their presentation. So the question is like, which part of the hiring process do employers consider to be the most important?
Well, of course, we know that the interview, the almighty interview, or almighty interviews, you may have more than one, are crucial to employers gauging how you will be as an employee. They will have a variety of types of interview questions, the technical questions, the can you do the job questions, and also like the STAR interview questions. If this happens, or if you're in that scenario, how would you respond? How might you handle that? So the interview process gives the employer an opportunity to learn how you will respond in different situations in their environment. One thing that I learned though, when I was developing Employment Edge, I talked to a lot of employers about what they were looking for. And they said, of course, we focus heavily on the interview. But one thing that people don't really think about too much is the screening process. And that's where they're gonna screen because you wanna get to that interview. And so if they say they're looking for specific skills or that they're looking for specific types of things from you, you want to make sure that that's highlighted in your resume or in the application. They have applicant tracking software that looks for keywords. So you want to be mindful of that to make sure that not only you're ready for that interview, but that you get there by making sure that you might be able to make it through the screening process by paying close attention to the description of what's required for the job and making sure that those things are highlighted in your resume or in the application that you submit.
Yeah, and I would follow up with that. It's every step because it is all cumulative. Each step represents a different facet of what we're trying to hire for. I worked with one company, owner company, right, where they would, even during the resume screening, they would actually check your LinkedIn profile to confirm things. They would check your Facebook to see what you're posting. So it's all tied together. So to pick one aspect, obviously, if you can get to the final interview, that's typically what will decide if you get an offer. But to get to that point, like Joanna is saying, it's every step. You have to be aware. And just as she had just said, one thing I noticed is when there's a posting, if you're not using the words that are in that advertising, in the job description, in your application, you will get screened out. It's as simple as that. So even though it's a similar word, like one of the things we do quite a lot is material takeoff versus bill of quantities, right? If the posting talks about bill of quantities, change your resume to reflect bill of quantities. Don't just assume, well, it's the same as MTOs. Debs?
Yeah, so I completely agree. I think all stages of the process are equally as important, from that kind of initial application where you are putting your first impression to myself as a recruiter. It's so important that your resume is professional. It's an accurate depiction of either your career history, and at the graduate level, it's probably more about really kind of showcasing who you are and what you can bring to the table. Likewise, any of the application questions, I'm going to be honest with you, we are incredibly brutal with it. If we've got a high volume of applications that are coming through and somebody turns around and says they've got under the amount of experience, or that it could be something that they don't actually have any work experience or internships, and that's what we're looking for, and they click no, our application tracking software will actually automatically screen those people out. It is, you know, if I had the luxury to go through absolutely every single application with a fine-tooth comb, I'd love to do that. But unfortunately, you know, we have a limited amount of time, resource, and you know, if you don't make the cut based on how you've gone into that initial application stage, you know, you'll never get to the interview stage, which may be where you could actually shine. The interview is, you know, it's going to be how you are going to fit into that particular company. So the questions that you answer have been especially put together to determine if you're going to be able to A, do the job, and B, fit into a company culture. And then finally, once you get to an offer stage, if you if you're being difficult in an offer stage, there are other candidates within that process as well who may actually get the job over you. So I think it's just, it sounds pretty hard-nosed, but there is huge competition for jobs, and you know there are limited number of jobs for people. So try and stand out at every stage of the process. Good.
I was trying to come up with something to say a little bit different than what's already been said. I think the one point Deb finished off with about the negotiation stage, I think it's important and respectful of everybody's time if you're upfront on what your expectations are. It is very frustrating to get to an offer stage and have somebody come back and say, well, actually, I want more money, or actually now I want to start a month and a half later, or, you know, that kind of thing. So be upfront. We're all very busy people, and our time is valuable. The other thing I would say, because looking for, you know, you're going to look for ways to try and stand out, is know about the companies, know where they're putting on presentations, try and get any point of contact that you can. So maybe your name is recognizable when you do come through the screening stage. Just any things that you can do to kind of get yourself ahead of the pack and out of that screening and into the interview stage.
Just to add onto that, so I actually do have an opinion about which part of the hiring process I think is sort of substantial towards the others, and that may be just based on the process that I take. I know a lot of recruiters typically have applicants applying to them and have hundreds to sift through. My team actually takes more so of an executive search approach. So we're reaching out to, say, 100, 200 people on Indeed, LinkedIn, and going from there. And based on those responses, say if we get 50 people back, respond back, we're calling all 50 of those people. And so for that reason, I would say that the phone interview process is the most important in many ways, because that's going to either get you to an in-person interview or not. And when you get to that in-person or virtual meeting, I suppose at this point, that's when you can really show your level of professionalism, how you present yourself, how you prepare yourself. But I think it's really important to come prepared with questions, to sit down in an office setting, quiet space. There's nothing worse when you're on the phone with someone and asking them questions and their dog's barking in the background, or they're outside and there's wind. So just making sure that you're fully prepared and ready to be engaged in that phone interview process to ensure that you can get on to the next steps.
All right, I don't really have much say on the recruitment process because I've never actually been on the other side of it. What I can give you is some experience I've had to get passed into the next interview stage. And so what I find, and it might be different for everybody, is I find that it's best when you're doing, because I do a lot of research on the company itself before I look into it. And just recently I learned that, you should be putting just as much research into yourself as you are into the company. I know that sounds weird because we're with ourselves all the time, but I've had experiences where, they're looking for EQ and IQ. And the best way to do that is to reflect on your personal experiences, learn why you're a good fit for the company, because 50% of the questions are going to be about why you're good with the company, but the other 50% is going to be about you. You know, like, what are you going to do in this situation? What makes you inclined to come to this company? And then lastly, one I get all the time is, what's something that you don't have on your resume that you want to share with us? And you always want to be kind of prepared for that. So just kind of sitting back, maybe it's the day before, the night before, you're just thinking about personal experiences, transferable skills, and ways you can present yourself the best way possible. And of course, doing your company research and company analysis before you do that process. So that's kind of what I have to share on personal experiences.
I'd just like to add one more thing from my personal experience. Like, I had a few interviews, and so one of the things that was common was like a few of the employers, they just tell us to walk through our resume. So we have to make sure that whatever we have written in our resume, we can totally explain it. And like, so they would know that whatever it's there, I can really talk over it as long as I want. So that's one more thing I wanted to add. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for your really insightful inputs. I'm sure everybody has learned a lot from just the last 10-15 minutes. And we had a hand up during the time that the panelists were talking. So I'd just like to call on Gilly. If you'd like to turn on your camera and your microphone, and you can speak as you wish.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. No, I don't need to turn on my camera.
Okay, no worries.
Would that be okay? Yeah,
Yes.
I heard a lot of what you're saying. Like, okay, I would agree that that is exactly true, what you guys are saying about interview. But based on my experience, I think the most important thing, the bottom line of what is exactly the employers are looking for is how much you know, and I think your experience exactly. If you have exactly experience at least 1 year or 2 years, the most, and if you don't have that, I don't think you have a chance at all to get hired. That's based on my experience. I've been, because I've been a lot of interview, and all similar questions, and at the end they asked you, do you have experience and for this kind of job and everything like that. So that's why I'm at the bottom, like I'm a kind of frustrated of, in terms of interview, like what else do I have to do in my resume, because there are already a lot of people doing my resume. They are already like different kinds of people editing my resume, and I was like, what else do I have to do in order to get hired? Thank you.
Do you
Any
mind if
suggestion?
I guess it depends on what stage of your career you're at. So there will be people who have got zero experience, graduates who've maybe done 6 months of work experience, and actually some people who haven't. Within our graduate program, we hired in Toronto, we hired 3 people who had no experience, and our role as a company is to actually train people up. So yes, if you've got the grades, and if you've got the right course you've done that actually is applicable to the job that you're applying for, it depends if you're going for something that is already an experienced hire versus a graduate level job. So those two are actually treated quite differently. If you are experienced or have a little bit of experience, I think the best way to try and build up that experience as well, to to make yourself more employable is to continue to try and get short-term internships. That is showing that you have the motivation to work within the industry. Some people don't have the ability to do that because it's financially it can be quite challenging. But if you can get work experience with somewhere, then that's something that will continue to build up your resume.
That's exactly what I'm looking for, like to get at least an internship. But I don't know, like most of the company, when you're saying like, I would like only an internship, and they're like, no, we're not doing it here in our company because, it's too expensive. Like they spend money for their intern. I don't know. I don't know what makes it expensive when you're just offering to volunteer to just gain experience.
So legally and probably morally, you shouldn't have people working for you for free. That's essentially, yes, you want someone to be able to get experience, but they would have to pay you kind of the minimum wage, just to make sure that, you're not going against slave labor laws. But yeah, it shocks me. What sort of jobs are you looking for, just out of interest?
Well, I applied in the construction industry.
Okay. And have you been looking at the big companies? Because actually they are far more likely to have internship programs and actually have a program that is set up so that you're not just coming in to kind of do basic admin work, that they're actually giving you experience on the job so that you can understand more about what it is that you would be doing if you were then hired longer term.
I actually would like be. I would like. I will be more happy or grateful if the state where I am at right now can be able to provide that internship, but I don't think so.
Yeah. So about like that's where I would like to step in. SAIT they're not allowed to get students internships. Only some of the courses that require placements, they can put you in pre-assigned places where you would work, but most of the time it's usually free. But thank you so much for your contribution, Jilly, and thank you so much, Debs, for clearing that up with her. We also had a question in the chat, and Samara said, are paying letters seen as an effective addition in a resume?
Sorry, I guess I'll chime in on that one. So, sorry, can you repeat the question? It's our pink letter?
Pain, like PAIN, letters seen as an effective addition in a resume.
Oh, okay. I'm going to pass on that question because I am not too sure. Maybe somebody.
What pain letters is, right?
I don't know what a pain letter is.
I'll take a stab at it because the link took me to where it is. So when I used to work at a midstream company, actually, let me take a step back. I think when you're applying to a automated system, when you're applying through a website, the pain letters aren't going to resonate because it's going into a system, it's getting auto-read, the Autobots are scrambling to it. I think the pain letters are more geared towards if you know somebody specific, if you know if you know the manager, a project manager or a construction manager, and you're trying to get a connection that way, then I think the pain letter matters more than a typical cover letter because you're trying to address something very specific. But like I said, when I was at the midstream company, those pain letters had to be very specific. You had to understand what was going on at the company. It's kind of like what Garrett was saying. Do your research. Don't just read an article or just read the website and then you're trying to create a pain letter. You have to understand, be connected to people in the company, understand what you're going to address for them. So I think it's a very specific niche letter that you have to be very careful on how you use it because it can be interpreted the wrong way. But like I said at the beginning, if you're doing an automated system, you're submitting it to a website, it's not going to go anywhere.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Charlie. And Samantha said thank you so much as well. And I'd just like to move to the next question, which is, what do employers expect from the interviewee in terms of the surrounding environment and attire? And also, what are the implications of unforeseen background distractions in virtual interviews? So that's a lot of, I just like to add a little bit to that. That's a lot of it's a lot of pain that I personally have been going through, just because I'm in my last semester and like I've been trying to apply to jobs. And I know they always say, be comfortable, don't be afraid to show your living space and all that kind of stuff. So I like spend like a whole day like arranging my room, making sure it looks really nice. And then I put on my suit and I make a video. And like after 3 weeks, they tell me, oh, we're sorry, you didn't advance to the next step. And I'm like, what else do I do? Like, so I'd really like if you guys can throw more light on that. Thank you very much.
Well, professionalism is certainly going to be sought after, whether you're in the online environment or face-to-face. And if you've done everything perfect with your online and your environment is great and your space was good and you were dressed for the part, that's probably not what the problem was. It could have been something else that was missing there, or someone that was just had a little bit more. So I wouldn't focus on that, thinking that was the issue, that you messed that part up, because you really don't know. But they certainly want to see a professional background, and also you want to dress the part. I know we tend to be a little bit more relaxed when it's a computer and you're at home, but you want it to be the same professionalism that it would be if you were sitting in that boardroom for an interview. So you certainly want to maintain that. As far as implications go, that can go both ways, actually. Of like all of a sudden your cat jumps on the keyboard, and it's like, it's a distraction in general, but it's really a distraction for you because you're like, oh my God, did they see the cat? Oh my God, did they see the cat? And you're not focused on the question, or you're losing thought. And so the implications could be that that's unprofessional and it could distract the panel, but it could also be very distracting to you. And so you want to make sure that your environment doesn't have any distractions that would create or cause you to miss a question, or to be, because interviewers can tell if you're distracted or you're not focused, or if you're thrown off by something. So that's two reasons to make sure that you try and avoid that happening.
I would add two things to that. One advice I was given early in my career, and I've always took it with me everywhere I go, is you should always dress one level above who you're interviewing with. So a lot of the natural oil companies, right, are, because I come from oil and gas, the big companies, they're very casual. So it's polo shirts, jeans, all this stuff. Well, then you should wear at least a suit, at least a collared shirt and a tie. If you're going for a bank, or if you're going to interview with somebody that is in a three-piece suit, then you better have at least a proper suit that fits. So I think that's very important to just understand who you're going to interview with and what the culture of the company is, and just try to present your best foot forward. And like you said, it's not like it's going to guarantee you a job, but at least it's not going to be a negative for you to move to the next step. When it comes to background, and I'll just use the one I have here, as you can see in the Zoom, I choose the background. I'm in my spare room. I have a massive bookcase with some information on there, and people can look into what the books I have, right? Or what I'm currently reading. If I was applying for a job that mattered, then it would be useful. Like you said, fix your room, give it a bit of personality. But in a setting like this, where it's a panel, it's a bit more kind of professional, I want something that's not going to be distracting. It's just like Joanna said, it's just background pictures. So there's nothing that is offensive, nothing that's going to cause somebody to lose focus, and the attention is on the person speaking.
So one thing I would add on that is we've all been forced into a position where we are working from home. We don't necessarily have huge control over the environment that we're in the same ways that we would have if we'd been able to go to, book a space somewhere. But with lockdowns, that's not always possible. I personally have had situations where on the other side, where I'm talking to candidates and my dog's been barking, or even worse, recently, I was on a video call with an internal candidate and my dog started to throw up. So I think interviewers there's a bit more leeway than there used to be. I think if you can preempt something and say, look, I just want to warn you, sometimes my dog might bark. You know, obviously I hope you won't. You can make a joke about it, but I think if you're preempting something that could be a distraction, it's going to be less of a shock, and it's hopefully going to distract you less because you've already brought it up. You know, I can't stop my dog throwing up. In the same way, or if you've got a little sister or brother at home who's crying, there's nothing you can do about it. Those are background noises that are now associated with the environments that we've kind of been forced into. It's not the same as being able to go into an office and, you know, everybody's at home now. So I think that, you know, yes, be professional. Dress for the job you're going for is probably my advice on this. So do your research, go on the websites, have a look and see what people are wearing. I've actually heard of situations where people have been turned away, and I've worked in a number of different industries as well as the construction industry, where it was media and people were too smartly dressed and people felt that they would not actually be a good fit. So I think try and do the research, try and understand what people would be wearing, because you want to fit in to a certain degree. And so try and be, I would always say, smart casual at the minimum, but likewise tech companies now, you could go in with a ball cap, you could go in with your hoodie, you know, Google, that's what Google hires. So for me, it's about doing that research. But if you have any doubt whatsoever and you don't know, always go smarter. It's not gonna play against you in most situations. But I have known of times when it has. So try and look, you know, try and do that research before. Hopefully that helps.
I totally agree with the interruptions. We almost had a little girl in a pink bathing suit on screen tonight. So it's not just us at home, it's our families, it's our animals, there's just so many more distractions. And I think it's how you respond to the distraction, how you recover from the distraction, that will allow the interviewer to gauge your personality and how you'll deal with stress. Your comment about whether your room was set up perfect or not. I think if you're in an interview, and I just had a debrief from a project I was trying to win, and the little things they will note, but if you're 1 and 2 candidate, you're tied for first, maybe then those little things will people will pay attention to. But if they've got 1 shining star and you're coming in number 10, your background isn't going to have you lose a job. I don't believe that you're not going to get hired. I mean, if you're too distracted and you've got inappropriate posters and whatnot, I do think that will definitely affect it. And I don't know, I kind of think that you can never be overdressed, but I think professionalism, I think in an interview too, people will know that you are trying to impress. If somebody came to an interview with me and they were in a full 3-piece suit, I would think that they were trying to put their best foot forward. I don't know that I would personally discount that. That was all that I really had to add beyond what everyone else has said on this topic.
I completely agree with you, Leslie, and I'll pass it on to the next panelist.
Yeah, I think everything was covered there. I don't really have much to talk about on that part because I'm, again, not a recruiter, but I'm definitely learning as well as the students right here. And yeah, this is all great.
I did want to ask Leslie one question though. You talked about you would be impressed with somebody in a 3-piece suit. What about the opposite? If they showed up in a tank top?
You can definitely be underdressed. It's way more detrimental to be underdressed. When in doubt, I would say overdress.
And awesome. Does anybody in the audience have anything to comment, or any special or anything to add or something like that? Or if not, I guess we would just move to the next question. And Said?
Yeah, the next question is actually related to the previous one. And it's like managing a professional environment, because as for me, I know like my room was a total mess today, so I had to move some furnitures and clothes to just look like this, but still it's not a professional environment. So I actually find it hard to manage a professional one. So what if someone does not have access to a quiet or professional environment?
Okay, sorry. So I think first thing we want to remember is to think about it from different perspectives in terms of whether you truly do not have access, and sometimes you won't. But there are sometimes additional options that you at least want to research and see what you can find before you sort of settle on the fact that you don't have it. I know that we're doing lockdowns and places are closed, but just seeing if maybe there's a library where there's a small room where you can reserve it. Maybe you have a friend who lives alone and hey, can I use your apartment for the interview just for an hour? I do want to say to make sure that you exhaust all options before you accept the fact that, because sometimes it's just somewhere that you just didn't think about, that you could have gone and used, or somebody else's room or something like that. I think it's important, if you realize when we say professional environments, it doesn't necessarily have to be like the background of the young man who asked the question. I thought was fine. It's clean. It doesn't have to be like a library behind you. It just wants to be clean and distraction free. And so we don't want to overthink what a professional environment actually is. And also you want to consider what Deb said earlier. If you do feel like, that the cat might jump out or the dog might bark, preempting, that's certainly true. That and making sure that they understand that this could possibly happen if you get to that point where you can't find anything better, or how you respond. Somebody said that, how you respond to it if something like that, a distraction happens. So all of those are things that I think are good for consideration with that one.
I'm going to say the biggest pet peeve I have is the vocal. It's the sound. If you can't, because we all have accents, we live in a global world nowadays. And I think having that ability to just articulate clearly and be heard is one of the key aspects. Debs?
Yeah. After talking about my dog, he just barked and climbed on my lap. So if you see his head pop up, I do apologize. It's so he doesn't disturb this. For me, I would say, again, speak to the company. If you really have got no other option, it may be that they can provide something for you. You could, if their office is open, you may be able to go in and use a meeting room. Yes, it might still be virtual because at this point we're not meeting people face to face due to COVID. That may change, obviously, but I think if you're in a position during these times where we don't have as much choice as we would have previously. It's not easy to go and use somebody else's apartment, or I think if you just let the interviewer or the recruiter know that you might need some accommodation, they may have some suggestions. So I think being open and human and upfront about it, for me, is key. It's saying, this may not be perfect, and that's fine, because not every interview is perfect. That's not what people are necessarily looking for. They're looking for people who are going to be a good fit for their business. And if humility and honesty is something that a company looks for, then I personally would respect that.
Yeah, I agree with the upfront and honesty. And I do know in Calgary, the situation might have changed since the 24th and we had new restrictions, but almost all of the city libraries have rooms that you can book for free. So there is options within public space that you can reserve a room at the library at no charge. So that might not be the situation now, but that is always an option in the city.
I think the only thing that I really have to add to that, and I don't necessarily know if it falls into the category of environment, but one thing that I do notice when interviewing people is whether they're using a cell phone or a laptop. I know for so many people, I use FaceTime as a resource, but there's nothing worse than when someone's holding their phone and it's shifting and it doesn't come across as professional. So I think it's great to just have a steady level device that you can speak clearly, concisely, and just directly to. So I hope that's helpful for anybody who is going to have interviews online.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say I agree with Debs in saying that, you know, I don't think it's really too much to do with your background. It's more just about the person and how you kind of present yourself. And I do agree there's Calgary Public Libraries where you can book out rooms. I do believe SAIT actually, I think their library is open where you can also book a study room and you can do it there. But pretty much as long as you have, you know, a good recording, you can speak clearly and you have good lighting, I think you're all set. So.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. And we just had one of our chapter officers. She had a question to ask the panel. Courtney, you want to go?
Hi. So I'm Courtney. I'm one of the chapter officers, but I'm also a person with a disability. And I went through the hiring process with this identity and I required accommodations for these digital interviews. So I think everyone would be interested to know how you work with accommodations in the digital world and what is still expected of an interviewee if they are a person with a disability.
So typically when we're sending out interview invites, or if we're using graduate software for video interviewing, for example, within that invite we would also ask somebody if they did have any accommodations that they would need, and then we would actually address that on a case-by-case basis. So how we could make that work, how we could make that process easier for you. So if there's something that's going to, if it's cognitive, then at least we know that we can either give more time, or we could, we could take that into consideration when watching a pre-recorded video. So I think it's our job to ask the question, but it's absolutely, it's up to the candidate themselves to say, this is what this is my disability, or this is the accommodation that I would like. And obviously everything would be done on case-by-case basis, but ultimately, if you're an equal opportunities employer, which Turner and Townsend are, we would absolutely make sure that those accommodations were taken for you.
Awesome. And did anybody else have anything to add to it from the panel? Okay.
Also, I would like to add one more thing. So I think it's always better, like before the interview, I can just open my laptop and open the camera and just record myself. I mean, how the sound is, or maybe how the background looks like. So I think it's a good preparation before the interview. So that's it.
Great. And we're just gonna skip the next question just because we pretty much covered most of the question. And so I'm gonna go to the one after that, and it says, for a recorded interview, what do hiring managers notice and expect while they're reviewing? What are the red flags? So I know a lot of these video interviews are, well, I'll just let you guys answer because I've been hearing a lot of stuff and I just wanted to confirm. So
Yeah, usually when you're applying for a job at a company where there is a just huge number of applicants, they will that will be a go-to method for interviews. And a lot of what they're looking for there is kind of similar to a regular interview, where it's preparation, it's professionalism, it's attire, a lot of the things that you would they would look for in a regular interview. You want to note for pre-recorded videos as well. But you also want to make sure that you follow directions and clock management. Some of them have. Sometimes you get the questions ahead of time, sometimes you don't. If you do, it would look nice if it seems like you've looked at them and prepared. And so I think generally speaking, it's very similar to regular interviews, but you certainly want to note those instructions and directions that you want to follow properly.
I'm going to pass this on to Deb since she has direct experience.
So I actually had to test the software for the pre-recorded interviews, and a couple of our team who were going to be reviewing the interviews as well. I made them do it as well. And something that we all agreed on, it's very uncomfortable. It can be very, very uncomfortable. It's very strange answering questions when someone isn't actually asking you them. We found a lot of candidates were very nervous, and actually what we trained our interviewers and our reviewers to do was not judge them on their confidence, on how they answer. It was actually more on how they answered the question. So if you're going through a high volume process like we do, and everybody's answering the same question, it's actually quite methodical. Every question is marked out of a certain number of points, and for each point of the question that they answer, you get points. So that is a preemptive screening process. That's, have they done the research on our company? Have they answered that behavioral question correctly? And then if there were people who were borderline, we would make a judgment based on, how they had actually performed in the interview. And likewise, when we came to final selection for our final 12, we again would look at who had performed better in those based on some of the confidence piece. But actually, to get through the process, we didn't expect everyone to be super confident and find it easy. And I think the more people do this, it will become more natural. And this is the way that graduate recruitment is moving. So I think just understanding that you're not going, if you fumble a little bit, but you still answer the question correctly, that's more what we want to know at this point. That is part of the screening process. If we then take you forward to the next stage and you're still completely nervous and can't get your words out, it's unlikely that you'd be able to be put in front of a client. Whereas when you're using new software that is daunting, then, I couldn't do it easily. And my people at Turner & Townsend probably know I'm quite confident. So it's, I think, again, we're using the human aspect of it. Nobody's going to be perfect using these kinds of things if it's not natural to them, but that doesn't mean that they can't do the job that we've asked them to do. So yes, that will take them through to another part once we've got the final scores of how everyone's done. And then we'll make decisions based on that, not, oh, look, they fumbled that. But to be honest, if people stutter through it and get the right answers, that's what matters to us at that point.
I don't have any further comment because I've never participated in a recorded interview process.
Same here, so I will also pass on that question.
So I've done a couple recorded interview processes, and so I guess the thing that I do myself is, like I said, I kind of treat it like a test, because that's exactly what it is. It's an initial test to see if you're right for the company. And so, just as I would kind of do evaluation on a stock, you got to do evaluation on the company itself. And that's diving deeper than just what the company does. It's about the management and the corporate culture and everything like that. And I find the more research you do, the more confident and comfortable you are. And then, like I said, again, doing research on yourself where you can relate those experiences to yourself. You can relate yourself to the company. And especially when I'm talking about personal experiences, I find that I'm a lot more comfortable. I'm a lot more confident, and the jitters kind of go away, and I can represent myself the best I can. That's kind of all I have to say about my personal experiences. But yeah, if you just do your research on yourself, the company, feel as confident as you can, and then I think that's the best you can do to kind of set yourself up for success.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. And I just like to add a little bit to that. Like, I'm somebody who usually falls down 1,000 times before I learn one thing. So it took, even before the pandemic, I know some companies used to have us do video interviews before they would call the successful candidates in. And it took me doing, like, not getting advanced to the next step on like 4 interviews before I actually started learning that, okay, like, because at the end of the day, like, it's pretty much like Deb said, sometimes they might not be looking like entirely on your confidence, but the way you answer the questions. And I would like pre-record and make sure I have my answers stone cold written in my brain. And then when I'm going into the interview, the confidence just comes. And just like Garrett said, when you're like relaying your personal life experiences to everything, you're able to be more confident and be more relaxed. So speaking from a student point of view, I actually thank you guys so much for considering the fact that it's not easy for us to like in this kind of new everything. So just to go to the next question, since nobody from the audience has any questions or contributions, Saeed.
Yeah. So what I found is like during an online interview, one of the major drawbacks is like not being able to make eye contacts or maybe shake hands, or I mean, it's a lot different from being in person. So the next question is, how do recruiters gauge a culture fit in an online interview?
Well, when developing employment edge, this is one of the topics that we focused on with employers. And a lot of the employers that I talked to about that basically said they can pretty well tell virtually or face-to-face about culture and fit based on the type of questions that they ask. You mentioned earlier you can't shake anybody's hand, but they can still body language, response to a joke, or they might ask questions about how do you feel about being friends with your coworkers? Do you think that's appropriate? If it's a friendly company, that might help them gauge whether or not the culture is for you. And so a lot of the employers that I talked about said they could relatively gauge it either way, virtually or face-to-face, based on your body language and your response to some of the specific questions they have. But someone else might have some additional advice about that.
I would add to that. It's something one of the other panelists had mentioned earlier about having your device pointing. Amy had said it, having your device pointed properly and not moving around. I think it's those little things, right? It's kind of like you were saying about the organization of your background. It's eliminate those things that could be a distraction, right? Looking the eye. So my laptop has a camera. I have to move this presentation to the laptop screen. I have multiple screens because when it's up, I'm looking up, I'm not looking at the camera. So it's paying attention to those little details. Debs?
So I think for me, it's very much on the questions that we would tailor to determine culture fit. So we would have for example, at Turner and Townsend, we have models of behavior that actually we are measured on throughout our career at Turner and Townsend. And we've tried to shape some of our questions around those models of behavior because those are kind of what underpin our business. Whilst you can't necessarily find what our model of behavior are on our website, because that's obviously an internal document, for me, I think if you do enough research, and that can be going on the website, looking at the values, trying to find testimonials, really doing that research around the company, it's going to help you shape your answers to the questions that we ask to actually kind of show that you understand what our culture is and how you would fit into it. Some company websites are terrible, and don't necessarily give as much detail as they can, or some of it's very corporate and the jargon. I would recommend that you try and network in that situation, things like this, and actually really talk to somebody who works at the company, understand outside of the corporate what makes us tick as a business, and again then shape your answers that you give to questions around that. If it's disingenuous, the recruiter or the interviewer will be able to tell. So I think you've got to really embody what you're saying.
You also in that research will hopefully determine whether it's a good fit for you. And I know as a grad, you're in a position where you're just looking for a job and some experience. But it is important to make sure that the fit is good for you too, because you work a lot of your day and you need to be happy and you need to feel like the values that you have align with the values that the people that you're working for have. That's all I had.
Good. And to add on to that point as well, I've always found that with our clients, when we're putting candidates forward for those roles, you obviously want to be yourself in an interview, but I often find that the hiring manager or whoever, the human resources managers, is often a large representation of the organization itself. So you're going to know in that first meeting, if you're having a good rapport with that hiring manager, if it's going to be a good fit. And more often than not, you can typically tell what the culture is going to be like just based off of who that hiring manager is. Not all the time, but I do find more often than not. So in many cases, to give yourself a benefit, put yourself in a situation where you're able to sort of reciprocate how the hiring manager is asking you questions, if they're telling a lot of jokes, how are you reacting to those, sort of mimicking what they're doing in the interview will give you sort of an advantage just because you're able to reciprocate that and they'll be able to be pleased. So that's my 2 cents.
And I don't really have much advice on this because this is not my expertise. I'm more in the, I'm learning just as you guys. So everything they said was very valuable, and yeah.
Awesome. Thank you all so much once again. I personally learned a lot from what everybody said. And so I'm just gonna move to the next question as we don't have any contributions from the audience. So the next question is, how do we network efficiently in a virtual environment? So I remember Deb said if you can't find some stuff on the website or through the testimonials, like try to network. So this kind of is the question that's like a follow-up to that. Like, how do we network in this virtual environment? Because I know networking is really important to finding a job, knowing more about the companies and other related topics. So how do we do that? Because I know there's things like LinkedIn, but I myself would not respond to somebody I don't really know that well with the, like that doesn't have a really strong professional kind of profile to, like, and talk to them like as if, it'll be better if I went to a networking event and I met them one-on-one, right? It's easier. We can have a better conversation. But when it's chat, or I'm not going to accept a video call from somebody I don't really know. So what's your guys' take on that?
Well, there are a lot of networking events. I agree that networking events are the key, but there are a lot of them that are moved online now. You can seek out networking events online. They're a little bit awkward. I've done a couple, and it's like, this is kind of awkward, but it gets more comfortable where you get to meet people in the room, and sometimes they break out into smaller rooms, so you have a smaller group of people to talk to. So you definitely want to look for opportunities for virtual networking events, if you can't really do the physical ones anymore. Other options would be professional organizations. I have a lot of those now as well. So if you're in nursing, or for example, and there's an association of nurses organization that you could join, they have networking events as well. And just directly reaching out to people. And that can be awkward too, but things are a little bit awkward now. But hello, my name is, I read about you here or there, and just asking specific questions. There are definitely, those are some of the ways that you can continue to network, even though we don't have that in-person option.
Dr. Joe, I'm sorry, like your mic was going like in and out, so we didn't grab every single thing you said. So if you don't mind just rolling back just a little bit, like it would be really appreciated.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, it's better now.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. But yeah, it was mainly just, can you still hear me? Thumbs up, because now I'm feeling like I'm still going in and out. But the virtual networking events for sure, which if you seek them out, you can find them, quite a few of them. Also, professional organizations have virtual networking opportunities as well. You can join student versions of like nursing organizations or professional organizations, and they will have networking opportunities as well. And then just directly reaching out to people, that can be a little bit awkward at times, but sending an email to someone that works in your field, or that you might want to ask to mentor you about something. And it gets a little bit awkward when you don't have that in-person connection to make with people, but there are a lot of professional organization and virtual networking opportunities that are available now since all of this started.
Yeah, building on that, I find that especially when I get the LinkedIn connection, especially through second or third connections, it's just a request. I'm a curious person, so what Joanna has said, if you ask a question, if you ask something very specific through that connection or through that introduction, you're going to get a better response. I will take the time to respond versus please connect. And then the next thing is, do you have a job? Do you have anything available for VR? Like, you got to make it personal. It's like we've been saying throughout the evening, right? You got to do the research. You got to think about what is going to get that person's attention, not just connecting. And like you said, it's no different than being at a social event, right? You're going to meet somebody, you're going to introduce yourself, and then you have to ask the question. You can't expect the other person to always be the one questioning things.
Yeah, I would add that LinkedIn is a great tool if it's used correctly. And I think, yeah, I agree with Charlie. There's, actually introducing yourself and rather than just adding someone is key. A lot of people try and connect with me, and as much as I would love to speak to everybody and try and help them out, I'll I'll give you an indication that I've got 2,000 unread connection requests at the moment, and that's not, that's just purely the volume that I get. I can't keep on top of it. And if I connected with every single person and gave them the time that they were looking for, I'd never have, well, I don't think I'd have enough hours in the day to do that, never mind my actual kind of day job. But I think targeting people in organizations is key. I think it's good to remember that everybody started somewhere at some point, and you're not going to get a hit with everybody. Some people will be very busy. Some people just aren't very comfortable networking themselves. But there are people within, certainly within our organization, who are very open to conversations. If they're interested, they pass those those conversations through to me to actually then go through a formal screening process. So it can lead to, it can lead to that recruitment piece. But I think it's just being brave and putting yourself out there and realizing that everybody's human. Not everybody has the time, but there will be people out there who, if you connect with, will be able to give you guidance. We'll be able to tell you more about the business that they work for, or give you advice on your career. So absolutely, I would use LinkedIn, but bear in mind, one of the biggest bugbears for a lot of people is having zero information, nothing relevant. You've got no rich media. Don't show that you're interested in construction or whichever field you're looking to get into. Make sure that it shows that you have a passion for what you're doing. Even if you don't have the work experience, you've got to be, someone's going to look at your profile and go, oh, well, they follow our company. That's great. And they like the material that we're putting out, or they've put a really insightful post. And those are the things that is actually a window for you. If you network appropriately using LinkedIn, it is not just a networking tool, but it's a great recruitment tool as well.
I think we are in the middle of a process where somebody's comment on LinkedIn attracted my attention. And we have a certain service offering that's difficult to hire. It's really difficult to describe what we need. It's more about the right fit. I connected with this person a few months ago, had a call. We didn't have a posting. Well, we have a posting right now. So Debs and I actually are in the middle of a hiring process with an individual that has come just because I liked a comment that they had made on something that one of our competitors was doing. And I was like, that person gets it. That person knows what we do. We could bring them into the business. They've got some experience, not directly relative, but and then I had a conversation and Deb screened this individual, and for me, it's about fit, and smart people you can train to do the tasks, but it's how are they going to fit in with us? Sitting here listening to all this, I've realized I worked for 4 companies over my career. I have never gotten a job by applying to a posting. There's been times when I have applied to lots of postings because I was looking to make a move, but I've never been hired through the traditional submit your application, get screened, and get an interview. I've always known somebody. When I came to Turner & Townsend, I knew somebody that worked in one of their other offices, and I said, hey, what's with this? And they're like, well, that posting doesn't work for you, but hey, are you looking? And the conversations went from there. I'm in a similar situation to the grads with joining Turner & Townsend March 2nd. I had been on the contractor side for 5 years, so my network of professional consultants and clients was there from 5 years ago, but it had lightened up. My contacts had not been as strong. So I started 2 weeks in. My mandate was to grow a business, and now I can't go out and network. I can't go to golf tournaments. I can't go do this. I found it very hard at first, but then I realized everybody is in the same boat. So I was getting more success reaching out to potential clients saying, hey, can we have a virtual coffee? Because it's not like one of my competitors could say, hey, I'll take you for golf. We are all in the exact same situation. And people are spending more time in front of their computers. I do find you're getting more responses because we're on a lot more. So I found that the virtual environment is both a lot harder, but it does have some some parts that are easier as well. I too have attended a number of conferences and professional networking sessions. I would recommend you guys, the Calgary Construction Association, the ones I've done with them, I found they put on a very good job of interacting amongst the Zoom participants. They use breakout rooms, and they do really give everyone an opportunity to speak and actually have conversations. And then I've been to some other conferences where it's just a presentation. So, it's hit and miss. Try and get a list of the attendees if possible on anything you're looking at, and do your research on those people. And the people that you see are attending similar events that are interest to you, that might be a good fit, that there's a cultural alignment there as well.
I agree with everything that both Debs and Leslie had to share. And I actually want to give a bit of an example, because I am still quite junior in my career, just that might actually address the question that Jilly had earlier on. And this relates to the question of how to network efficiently through a virtual meeting. When I was full-time at SAIT, I'll say, because I've just been working for the past couple of years and slowly finishing my degree. I had no experience, I had no internships, and I really wanted to figure out how to network efficiently, but what was going to make me stand out in either a virtual interview or virtual networking situation. And so through that, I wasn't able to find internships or opportunities to volunteer to put something on my resume. So something that I saw value in was being able to take a full course load, volunteer on the side, and work 2 jobs, which I know is a lot, but I found that during an interview or during a networking event, when people say, well, what do you do? Well, I work from this time to this time, 5 days a week. And it just makes you stand out and saying, I'm a hard worker. I'd love to do that for your company if there's an opportunity. And to a lot of people, that makes you stand out. And in many cases, and in my case, it actually got me the job that I have now, which is great. So I think that there's those types of tools and those types of opportunities to be able to put yourself in a position where you stand out a little bit more during a networking event and also in an interview. So I hope that's a helpful piece of advice.
And I'll just add, all of that is very valuable information about networking itself. As for finding the right networking event, I know that SAIT has a lot of the resources. You can check out the SAIT's clubs. I know for like the business, there's one for each major. We recently did one for SFC, a virtual networking event. And I think there's actually a networking club at SAIT that you can join and kind of learn the ins and outs about that. The one advice I have is that, I think it's safe to say everybody is uncomfortable at the start when networking. It's more about kind of being comfortable with being uncomfortable and putting yourself out there. Another very resourceful tool is LinkedIn. And I think don't underestimate the power of being a student. Always reach out. The worst thing that they're going to say is either, sorry, I can't make it, or not respond, but at least put yourself out there. If they see your name, you come in with an agenda, you have questions that relate to whoever you're talking to. Most likely, if you say that you're a student, they'll respond and say, hey, yeah, I'm down for a quick phone call or a virtual coffee, or they'll just say, sorry, I don't have time now. And you maybe ask when or something, but don't ever underestimate the power of being a student and putting yourself out there, because that's where you're gonna really learn to grow yourself, is when you're outside of your comfort zone. And yeah, that's what I have to say.
Okay, so we all know that in this new environment, the employers are actually expecting the employees to work from home. So we need to be pretty familiar with the technologies and using the laptops or our cell phones. But some of the people might have difficulty in managing a laptop or did not have access to that much technologies. So the next question is the new environment going to affect the people who are not so familiar with technologies?
Yes, it absolutely will. There definitely most things being virtual now. Additional use of technology is certainly going to be a requirement. Some steps that you can take to prep for that. A lot of companies, even if you're working from home, you still have access to your IT department, which I was on the phone with mine this morning. If there's specific software that your company is using that you're unfamiliar with, the information technology department at your job can usually walk you through that or give you some training on that. So that's certainly the biggest resource that you want to lean on. And then there's just online resources. You can research online and learn to use just about any piece of technology out there. So doing your research and also leaning on your IT department would be some advice that I would recommend.
Absolutely. And I can relate a very specific, one of our clients we're working with right now It's if you can't work because they're so tech savvy, and they're a mining company. So they're not like a Google or something. They're just a blue chip mining company, but they're incredibly embedded into technology, SharePoint, Teams, conversations, Power BI, and they point blank said, if you don't have ability to work in this environment, you're not going to fit. It's not going to work. So you have, like Joanne said, I think you do have to make that effort to go find it. And we live in a digital age. You can't get away from it. So it's hard to expect an employer to accept that you don't have access. But you're still a good fit for the company.
Yeah, I would agree. I would actually say, in terms of what's changed for us, is that we're just on technology a lot more. I think, and on video calls, and actually we're probably more connected than we've ever been as a business, because prior to COVID, we would do phone calls or we would do Skype calls with no video. It was actually very, very rare that somebody would put their video on. And now it's not quite mandated, but it's very much expected. So I think the technology that we're using, or the technology that we had, we're actually using more effectively now. So COVID hasn't changed a huge amount, apart from that we're just using it more. So I would say that anybody who wasn't up to speed with technology wouldn't have got a job prior to this. It's just now this is very much this is the world that we live in, and we're very reliant on it in ways that we may have got away with it. But we're a company of 6,500 people globally. If we don't have the technology, we can't function as a business. And actually, we upgraded some of our technology because it wasn't actually something that was working particularly well with everybody using the technology. So yeah, I would say if somebody tells me that they don't know how to use a computer, or they don't feel comfortable with video chat, they're probably not going to be a good fit. It's, get comfortable with it.
And they probably won't be a grad.
No.
I'm listening to this and I'm
Generation
thinking,
Z.
Is there anybody on this call that I can use any Microsoft product better than? Probably not. And I think you guys are all way more savvy on these systems, just especially in the nature of the education you're doing right now. The fact that you're doing all of your schooling remotely, you've got to be, I'm sure you're comfortable with the technology that would be required to get you through to an interview stage. And then if you're being required to use a specific technology or software for the role, I think that would be something you would be trained on within the role. And then if the question is about the training of new technology, having things like we do a lot of training with shared screen and video chat. And a lot of our new hires spend an hour going through something, sharing screen, showing us what they think, and then an hour take it away, and then we come back again. So we're trying to replicate that one-on-one training that you would get in person if you were sitting in the office. I try and make sure the people that are working with me that are junior know, if you get stuck, send me a note. If it says I'm in a call, drop me a quick message or something. Don't wait until 4 o'clock when it shows that I'm available and I don't have a meeting. Like, keeping people aware that we're as close as we were if we were sitting beside you in a desk when you're training.
Yep.
I guess that's me. I don't really have much more to add on that point, but yeah, I'll pass that off to Garrett.
Yeah, I honestly don't have much to add on that as well. Just coming from the student side, again, a lot of my I'm doing here is learning. So the more you guys ask questions, the more I'm learning as well. But that's all I have to say about that.
All right, thank you guys so much, and that was really informative, and it's really true. I mean, Leslie was like, you can't even graduate if you're not tech savvy, at least to the barest minimum, right? Because all of our assignments are digital, all of our classes are video calls. Everything we're doing is off the screen on your keyboard. I don't even remember the last time I actually wrote down something. If I'm taking notes, I'm typing it. That's how much we've gone so digital right now. So, but it's really great. Like just like the Leslie and Deb said, like we would, if we get hired by these companies, they would train us to know how to use the softwares that we are not familiar with. And that's really helpful because I mean nobody knows how to use every single software, right? So I'm just gonna move on to the next question. It's actually the second to the last question. And it just says, what do we expect in a virtual team meeting and how do we prepare for it? So I know this is a very, this is a question that's really relative to the kind of job you're doing or the kind of meeting you're about to have, but we would just really love it if you could just like round it up and summarize it for us, you know, just because I mean most of us haven't worked in these kind of environments before, so like we're just looking for any insight you can give.
Sure, yeah, your virtual team meetings will be kind of a lot like this, what we're doing now, where you'll have everybody on the team. Expectations for the meeting will probably be let you know that in advance. There may be an agenda. If you have a role or something to talk about, they will probably let you know that in advance. Many virtual meetings, depending on where you work, that makes a
Dr.
difference.
Joe,
May want you.
you're breaking out again.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Is this better?
it is better. Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I have to turn it off and turn it back on, and then it works. So I assume you still hear me. But yes, there are a lot like this meeting that you see here, and usually you'll get an agenda prior to the meeting. If you have a role or something to say at the meeting, you will know about that in advance. And it's just really a meeting of conversation, just like we're doing right now. Some will require that your camera is on. Some don't really care, and so it really just depends on the environment that you're working in.
So early in my, a couple of rules that I always live by when it comes to meetings, especially in the virtual meeting, and this might be controversial, but if you're invited to a meeting, there's a reason for you to be invited. So you should always ask a question. You shouldn't just sit there for an hour, hour and a half, not say anything, and just pretend that you're taking notes. I have always been a strong believer that if you're there, you should ask something, especially if you're a student or a new grad. It's your perfect opportunity. When I started my career, I hate 3-letter acronyms. So I would, you know, when there's a break, I'll go, oh, by the way, could you please explain that? And for me, that was always a way that I could be involved in the meeting and not feel like I'm just sitting there spending time. I do know that there are different personalities, and that might not be always the most comfortable situation. But I've always just believed that you need to. And even if you don't have a question during the meeting, you should always follow up with somebody in that meeting with questions. You're not expected to know everything. So in these virtual meetings, if you're not comfortable speaking up, use chat. If your manager or the presenter is savvy enough, they can respond that way. But use the technology. That my whole point is that don't try to hide behind the technology. And you know, and I wanted to say this one thing. It's interesting because 30 some people are in this fireside chat, and probably a dozen people, maybe 10 people have asked questions. And it's a perfect example where you have an opportunity to network, you have an opportunity to ask specific questions or something that you're curious about, but no one wants to step up and do it. Debs?
Yeah, well, it could be that we've just answered the questions so well, Charlie, that they don't need any further explanation.
Yes.
For me, there's etiquette. So doing things on video has changed things slightly, just because we have to use the technology the way it's set up to undertake some of that etiquette. So raising your hand, for example, not talking over people, you know, things that would be a lot easier to do in an actual face-to-face meeting, just can be a little bit harder in a virtual meeting. And I think it's using the technology the way that it's been set up so that you can actually either participate, ask questions, and make sure that it's actually going to be a productive meeting. And also, if it's a very long meeting, making sure that it's you look like you're engaged. It can be difficult. It can be challenging. I've had 3-hour meetings where it's been intense, and it's lunchtime and you want to eat, but you have to remain engaged in the same way that you would in a room. If you fell asleep in a room, somebody would say something to you. So if you start to nap during a long meeting, it's probably going to be frowned upon online. Just see everyone laughing.
I have to ask, did that happen once? Was that an experience that you faced?
I have seen people who have not looked like they're still with it. They might as well have drawn on little fake eyes because they've been napping.
That's too funny.
You see the nodding dog.
I think for some of the meetings that we have a lot of updates and a town hall and a presentation where there isn't the opportunity that you are talking like this. We use a program called Slido where you can pose your questions, and then towards the end the questions are put up and addressed. So for those ones, you're actually requested to not have your video on. I think I don't know if the town hall is definitely one, but there are some other ones that I attend where there's 75 people. They request you turn your video off. And I've found that for myself, I actually will intentionally step away from my desk with my laptop for those kind of meetings so that I am engaged. If I am sitting here and I have my 3 screens, I can be a little bit distracted. So I actually mindfully take my laptop and maybe go sit at my kitchen island so that I'm fully focused, I'm absorbing what's being said. So it's making sure that you're giving yourself a distraction-free environment to engage like you would if you were in person. That was all I really had to add. Amy?
The only thing I really have to say to that, and I think that it goes hand in hand, whether it's a virtual team meeting or a interview, log on early. You don't want to be arriving late. Things happen, but you want to be fully prepared and logged on. And much like Deb's said already, was be engaged. You want to make it seem like you're adding value to that interview or that meeting. So be engaged. Don't be sitting at your phone. Distractions happen. So make sure that you're in an environment where you're not distracted. But I would definitely say showing up early and logging on early to show that you are prepared is definitely just a simple tool. You really don't need to do much. You're just automatically on. So I think that speaks volumes.
Yeah, and kind of what everybody else said, the best thing you can do is contribute. You don't have that you do have that face-to-face, but you don't have that in-person kind of feeling. So you just got to make sure that you're asking questions like Charlie said. I think we all know the expression, be where your feet are, the book, Be Where Your Feet Are. I guess we can change that to kind of be where the screen is and always be present, ask questions and contribute as much as you can. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess just don't fall asleep in the meeting. So during our classes, sometimes at the end of the class, when our instructor is about to close the discussion and there are a few students and the instructor is like, are you still there? Because I'm about to leave. All right. So yeah, we are at the very end of our Fireside Chat. And this would be our last question. And especially I wanted to ask this question, and because I'm a power engineer and or plant operator. And So in the last summer, I was lined up for a summer job, and I was about to start it, but at that very time, COVID broke out, and so my employer let me know that they won't be able to continue with this summer position because maybe all of their some of their employees are not feeling safe. So the question is like, what measures are the employers taking when the job requires physical presence? Because like, as for me as a plant operator, I had to be present at the plant or I cannot work remotely.
Okay, so I turned it off and turned it back on. And so basically what a lot of my job and a lot of my friends' jobs where there are, because a lot of it, you'll have people who need to be there physically and people who don't. And so it's sort of separated so that it's not a crowded environment. Anybody who does not need to be there is working from home. And then those who do need to be there to do their physical jobs actually come in, and that limits the number of people there. A lot of jobs are, I think all of them are following the CDC guidelines or whatever the guidelines are wherever you are in terms of COVID precautions, where you wear a mask or you have to do screenings before you come to work, or some require testing. My sister's a nurse and they have to test all the time. And so there are, when it was new and it first happened, it was just like, okay, everybody stay home, we're shutting this thing down. But now that we've learned a lot more about it and way to manage it, they're sort of rotating who comes in when. And it varies based on where you're working, but that's sort of how it's being done where I am and where some of my colleagues are working.
My experience, my career has mainly been virtual, or I've always been able to work on a laptop. So I have not much to add. I'll pass it on to Debs.
So I think one of the things that we've been doing at Turner and Townsend is we provided the choice for people about whether they would attend the office. There's people in our business who were desperate to get back to being in the office. They had children in the house. They didn't have adequate working spaces, or they were just felt very isolated. So what we did was we set up the office so that there could not be any more than the number of people that are legally allowed to be in that office. Everybody's desks were wiped down. You couldn't, if you sat in a desk, that was your desk for the week, and then it was deep cleaned afterwards, and you had to book your desk if you wanted one. So we have to book if we want to go into the office. Not many people going into the office at the moment, and particularly in Toronto with full lockdown now, that's not an option. But when the office was open on a Thursday, we would book our desk space and say that would be our desk for the week. Some people didn't turn up for the entire week, and that's fine, but it just meant that that space occupied by somebody was purely by the person who, it wasn't just one person sat there one day, one person sat there another day. So things like hot desking completely gone. But yeah, very much it's government guidelines. We provided everybody with company masks. We've got these little keys where you can open doors and stuff with them. So the tools have been provided, and a lot of companies will have done this to make sure that everybody, if they were being asked to come back into the office or wanted to come back in the office, there's two things there: that they were made to feel safe. That's an office environment. I think I can't necessarily speak to like a plant or a factory personally, because that's that's not the type of work that I would do. But my friends who do work in those environments, they do follow very stringent health and safety regulations. So the number of people allowed on those sites now are limited. They have to do physical distancing. There will be inspections as well to make sure that that's happening. There will be huge fines for those companies if they're not adhering to it. So I think that there's enough of the stick element that if people aren't doing it correctly and somebody basically reports them, that they'd be in very big trouble. So there's doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do and making people feel safe, and then also because that is their duty.
I would say that, like Charlie, most of my working has been remote. I still may have been in an office, but I've worked in different locations than my direct manager. As a consultant, I think that we are perfectly situated to work remotely. And just like to echo what Deb said, our office in Calgary, actually, any workstation that wouldn't fit in within the social distancing requirements has been taken down. So there's only a handful of spots you can actually physically sit in. But that said, I think we have 1 out of 40 people based out of Calgary that's really keen to go in. Most people really have grown to be comfortable and work quite productively from home. And then, yeah, just more what Deb said about the working on site. We do have some projects that require people to go to site. We would be following the guidance of the prime contractor on site, and we would be following the health and safety regulations of the client and the local authorities in the health and safety regulations. So, I mean, we're not doing anything that's going to put anyone in harm's, and we're doing all the accommodations that are required to meet the physical presence requirements of the authorities. Amy?
I don't really have much to add on to that particular question because I work for a team, we're a team of 10. So we're social distancing, working from home. One thing that I do want to share that I think just might be helpful though, for those who are applying for positions, and maybe other people have different opinions on this, but Leslie, I know that you mentioned at the beginning, there's nothing worse than getting to that final stage and somebody else saying, I want $10,000 more, or I want an extra week of vacation, or I'm looking for this, and getting to that point. So I guess the question, what measures are the employers taking when the job requires physical presence? I think that that's now an important question for you as the person who's doing the interview, to now ask the employer that, to ensure that you're okay going into the office. Because I've found that a lot of the candidates that I've been interviewing right off the bat now will say, when we get to the interview stage, I actually want to work from home all the time. And that's not always the case. And that can be the deal breaker instead of that extra week of vacation, that extra $5,000 that they're looking for. So I think it's really important to now add that question into the questions that you're asking your potential employer. What are those measures being taken for your own safety, but for their current employees' safety? And then reassessing at that point, okay, it sounds like this role is going to be in person, or there is going to be work from home options. Am I okay with either or, yes or no? So that it doesn't get to that interview or to that negotiation stage and that being the deal breaker. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Well said, Amy. I'm kind of just like her. I don't really have much to add or any input on that. So I'm just going to pass it on.
Oh yeah, you passed it on to me. I also don't have anything to say about it. I'm just kidding. Thank you all so much for coming to our fireside chat today. And that would be all of the questions that we had for you guys. We are really appreciative for you taking, like I said, you taking time out of your busy schedules. We know how many, we had somebody who couldn't come from Turner and Townsend, and we understand that everybody's really busy at this time, and you guys still took some time out to be able to attend and answer our questions so well that we ran out of questions to ask. So we really, really appreciate you guys. And before we let everyone go, if it's okay for the audience, we just wanted to take a group picture. So if everybody who has their camera off could turn their camera in, so we could just do a screenshot. So you can maybe give me a little pose or something like that, you know, just to make it, because I'm gonna do a pose for sure. So hi Amanda. Yep. Is everybody ready? If you're ready, give me a thumbs up. Let's get it. Okay. Yep. And just one more. There we go. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. And for the panel, would you guys like to give closing remarks? I know you've said a lot and you're probably really tired, but if you just had a few words of encouragement or advice or something for us, I know I would need it, but I'm talking for everybody now. But so please, as you please.
Just thank you so much for having us. I'm super excited. This is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And I've really enjoyed it. And I hope that you guys got from it what you were looking for. And I'm going to drop my email address in the chat. And so if you ever have any additional questions or questions about Employment Edge, do feel free to reach out to me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And for the rest of the panel members, if you like, you could please leave your contact details in the chat as well. Just so if anybody wants to reach out, they could. If they were too shy to ask questions, they could reach out to you personally. Yes. So anyone else? I see Deb's mic is.
Yeah, I'll add to that. Just, you know, really great discussion. Thanks for having me. It's 10 o'clock here, so it's actually my bedtime. But rather than giving you my email, because I get probably 1,000 emails, if you could send me an invite on LinkedIn, I'll put my LinkedIn URL. I know I told you that I haven't actually responded to quite a few of those, but if you put a note on it and say Fireside Chat, what I'll do is I'll make sure that I actually connect with you. And if you do have any questions around recruitment processes or opportunities at Turner and Townsend, then I would be absolutely delighted to answer any of those questions.
I too have left my email in the chat. I think this was a great conversation. You guys all are very switched on and taking the proactive approach to invite people like us to come and answer your questions and give you as many tools as you can have to be prepared as you embark on your careers. I'm based in Calgary. I've been in the construction and consulting industry. So even if you're not sure that consulting is the role for you or Turner and Townsend, I'm happy to talk. And if anybody, you know, network connections or anything, I think that there's always some connection that can be made. So I hope you guys all have a good rest of your semester and good luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll share what Leslie said. You guys are graduating, or will be graduating in interesting times, and you just got to keep at it. Yeah. Enjoy it for what it is. Unfortunately, every generation, every graduating class has different challenges.
And thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate being able to speak to sort of being in the middle ground of working, but also in school. It's kind of an odd balance, but I've also attached my email. One thing that our firm does, I'm with Klopp Richards and Associates, we're a boutique recruitment firm here in Calgary. We actually offer resume review at no charge. We want to help get great candidates out to our clients. So if you're looking for a job or know someone who's looking for a role, feel free to send me an email with your resume. I'd be happy to connect and see how we can best help in the recruitment search.
All right. Thank you so much. And I'd just like everybody to know that this video, the video recording for this meeting is going to be posted on ptk.org and on our SATE page, PTK SATE page. And thank you all so much once again. I cannot say thank you enough. You guys have been so helpful.